Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to be here at the second annual CarbonExpo. Today I have the pleasure to go over with you some of the common pitfalls seen in carbon capture and sequestration projects and discuss how we have helped some of our clients solve these problems in the past. First, to get us started, a little bit about myself. My name is Josh Neese, and I have been with TRC Consultants for almost 14 years. TRC truly believes that we will be successful and grow if our clients are successful. So a big part of my job is helping our clients transition from their current evaluation methods to PhD win. This includes everything from assisting in training and development of best practices to modeling unique tax routines or international contracts for our medium and large clients. I also helped incorporate the requests and needs of our existing clients in the development of our latest version of PhD Win, version 3. So carbon capture and sequestration, that's what we're all here to talk about today. While CO2 floods are not a new technique in the industry, the requirements for your CCS projects are unique and have various hurdles that must be overcome. Tracking and reporting the data that you have is probably the biggest hurdle most of our clients are running into right now. How do we generate and aggregate the data from the various sources into a single data set? Then how do we calculate the cash flows that include all of the special cost or revenue that may be associated with these special projects? And then last but definitely not least, how do we take the work that we've done and report the relevant data to our corporate for our corporate needs or for our various regulatory reporting needs? One thing that we have found that has made a big difference for all of our clients has been developing data discipline. Improving your data discipline is the first step in streamlining your organization. You're going to want to be able to utilize tools that will provide an architecture that helps your corporation maintain that structure, which will help improve your evaluations and your reporting options. Improved data discipline will also greatly reduce your QC time that you have before you submit a report and also eliminate some of the most common errors that we see every day as people work with our product. For many organizations, the tool of choice is PhD Win version 3 for providing that data discipline and the architecture to be utilized within the organization for doing their evaluations, but also reporting all of the necessary data. So what are some of the most common obstacles that our clients are going to face here in getting started with a new CCS project? So problem number one that my clients are going to be facing is how do you organize complicated data from multiple sources? And the key to this is going to be establishing good corporate standards that everyone is going to be utilizing. So those standards are obviously going to have to include oil, gas, and your standard products from your typical evaluations. But it'll also need to be able to include those unique new products to your CCS projects: CO2, CO2 production, CO2 recycle, and CO2 injection, and so forth. You're also going to need to be able to grab data from various sources and aggregate them together. And a lot of times that data isn't going to be formatted the same way or look the same way. So you're going to need to have a system that is capable of working with multiple data sources. And then how do you go through and update and append your current data set? So after you've already done the work and you're looking at your next quarter, next year evaluation, you want to make it to where you don't have to redo the work all over again. It'd be much easier for you to just update and append and add new assumptions to your evaluation and work from there. One of the main things that will set you off on a good start before anything else is understanding your data source. So taking the time to review the data that you're receiving, the definitions of that data before you even start pulling it in. So you want to know things are like, are you working with allocated or unallocated data? For my clients that work and build their projections on a volume per day basis, you're going to want to make sure that somewhere in your data you have a data point for the number of days online in that particular month. That way you can do your adjustments for volume per day based on actual days in that month, and that you are online and not a nominal month or a calendar days in that month. And you'll have a much better evaluation option. You're also going to want to make sure you review where is that production measured. Is the gross gas equal to gas produced, or is it gas after they're shrinking for NGLs? Do any of your gross values account for any flaring or consumption of any products on site? So basically what we're looking at here is, are we looking at wellhead or sales data a lot of the time? I know I had a client that I spent a lot of time working with them to build out a special formulas for them to adjust their products from the wellhead down to sale. And then it turns out after we did all that work that the data that he was receiving was actually already sales data and not production data like he had assumed. So we spent a lot of time doing a lot of work, and it really didn't pay off at the end of the day. So you've got to make sure you're looking at the right products. So one of the things that will make this a lot easier is, as a corporation, you define a set of corporate standard products that everyone's going to be able to use and know about. You're then going to want to review the source data that you're receiving and ensure that the product names of the source data match the existing products in your corporation. Big issues here: always watch out for spaces, underscores. Make sure that is it CO2 prod or is it CO2 production? Where are those changes in the names that you're going to need to be able to know about and map accordingly? You may also need to be able to create custom products. So obviously you're going to need CO2 purchase and CO2 injection, CO2 recycle, but you may also have CO2 flare, CO2 emitted, various other custom products that you may need to have for both evaluation and or reporting purposes. Having a good corporate standard for those products and those product names is going to make everything down the line go a lot easier. And then last but definitely not least, you want to make sure that your products follow corporate standards for the units and the conventions. You want to make sure that when you're talking about NGLs, everyone is working in either barrels or gallons. That when you look at a sheet, you know whether it's in M barrels or in barrels, or MCF or MMCF. So make sure that those units, those conventions all match up, so you're not having to go back afterwards and make any adjustments to your volumes. It's fairly easy to make those adjustments before we pull in the data. You're also going to need to have a system that is pretty flexible. You want to be able to import data and aggregate data from multiple data sources. So oftentimes you'll have data that is stored in an Access or a SQL file, say maybe like internal production data that you may have. You may also have data that's simply in Excel or a flat CSV file format. And then also custom vendor files that those production vending companies all have their own standard file format that they utilize. Those files have pre-built layouts and everything like that that can be mapped and built into your system. So you're going to want to make sure that you can view and access all of these different file types. And then once you're able to access it, you need to be able to import and identify that what is in this column in this Access file or this Excel file is equal to this data point in your corporate data system. You're going to want to be able to import all kinds of data, not just general information or production data, but also projection and expense and investment information as well. So you're going to want to have a nice flexible system that's able to aggregate multiple data sources and incorporate all kinds of different data. Here on the right hand side, you can see a sample of PhD-Win's mapping methodology, where users are able to map individual tables or files for the data that is in the column to match what the appropriate data is in PhD-Win. And then if you're working with an existing project, you may be needing to update for Q1 or year-end values, and you may not want to overwrite everything. So you're going to need to be able to update production, daily or monthly production, test data, prices or expenses or projections. And you're going to want to be able to do that in a way that gives you the control that you need. Because you're not going to necessarily want to overwrite everything. Some of the data, like particularly monthly history, you're simply going to want to append to what is missing. And sometimes other data you simply want to ignore, even if it's in that file. You know, you don't want to necessarily overwrite ownership every time you pull in a new data point. So you're going to want to have something that gives you a little bit of that control to make it easier for you to update your existing project with new information as time rolls on and we continue these evaluations year over year. So another obstacle that you're probably going to have to face is how do you use those corporate product standards that you built to define the relationship of the products and how they should work together, and then how do you effectively communicate that standards to your team so that they are using the right products in the right area when they begin their evaluation and not when you're having to go back and QC the data afterwards. So as we all know, various areas, various projects are all going to have different product requirements that need to be defined and controlled at a corporate level. Some will have NGLs and some won't. Some will have NGL calculated off oil, or some will have it based off of gas. You're going to want to be able to control that at a corporate level so that you end users aren't having to go through and review that every single time they move to a different case. Field conditions can also change how products are calculated. And in what order that they're calculated. So by having a controlled set of corporate definitions for how your different phases work together, you're better able to limit what products the users are calculating and how they are calculated. And of course, not all products are appropriate for different areas. So you're going to want to definitely make sure that you have a way of limiting the products to the appropriate people for the appropriate areas. So by having a good corporate product definitions, you're able to enforce product discipline. So it's very similar to daily discipline. It's a discipline on the products and how they're defined. And this will make sure that you're always comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges, right? So you want to be able to control what products are available to users. Before they do anything else, what products are they going to be using? You should want to make sure that in an area that has NGL, that they have NGL available to them. Not LPG if LPG is not available in that area. You want to make sure that you're naming them appropriately. I've definitely seen several projects where different users in different areas called different things, or it's the same thing, different item names, like NGL or LPG. And when at a corporate level we tried to aggregate the data, it looked like we ran into errors. It looked like we lost data because we were gathering all of the NGL together and all of those LPG volumes dropped off. We ran into just general QC issues. You're trying to figure out if a product is projected, but if they're projecting the wrong product, you're going to think that something is missing. So that corporate definition of your products will definitely help users get started on the right path so they do a better evaluation all the way down the road. So how do we define those corporate definitions, and how do we enforce them? So you're going to want to make sure you're controlling the products and how they're defined. So over here on the right hand side, you can see an image of the phase configuration in PhD-Win that controls what products are available on a case. So no products that are outside of this phase configuration would be available to the users. So you can also see which products are going to be projected. If you have a major phase product and a minor phase product, you may need to be projecting things like yields to be able to back calculate your products. And you also want to make sure you have any unique products set up. So if in this particular area you're projecting wet versus dry CO2, you're going to want to make sure that that is available to the users to project so they can project appropriately for this current evaluation. You want to be able to control what products are calculated and what that formula is. So on the right hand side, you can see the various formula products that we have, such as NGL or GOR, and what that definition is. So GOR is pretty standard, gas divided by oil, but NGL itself can often change. It can be gas times NGL yield, oil times NGL yield, CO2 wet prod times NGL yield. So there's various products that could be the driver of your NGL, and you'll want to make sure that you control that so the users aren't building for the wrong products. You may also have your special products like a CO2 recycle. Total CO2 emissions minus the injected is equal to your CO2 recycle according to the EPA. So you may have CO2 purchase minus CO2 emitted minus CO2 injected if you have CO2 emitted or CO2 flared or any other CO2 product that would go into that calculation. You want to make sure that that is included here in the phase configuration definition so that your CO2 recycle is calculated correctly. So phase configurations in PH2N provide that control. It limits the product selection. Only the products that are listed in the phase configuration will be available to the users on the case. Users always know what is appropriate for their area by simply reviewing the products that are in that phase configuration. They know that they have the right products because the corporation defined those phase configurations for their particular area. You know that the product relationships are all set up correctly. So you're able to define the formulas at a corporate level, which will then obviously improve your consistency in your evaluation, reduce QC time, and make it a lot easier for the users themselves to get started. Another way that you can use that phase configuration is by using it to improve the transparency and the communication to the different users. So a lot of times I'll use the naming of the phase configuration to provide that transparency. You may want to name the phase configuration by the products that are associated with it, the special products that make it unique, or the products that are going to be required for this. Or you may want to review an area, see which phase configurations are appropriate for that area, and then put the area name, the field name at the beginning of the phase configuration, which will make it a lot easier for the users to pick the appropriate one. So if I'm working in Bridge 4 field, I know that there are one of two appropriate phase configurations for that field, and I simply need to pick out of two instead of a whole list of items. Makes it easier for the QC team as well to review the data after it's been input, to review the phase configurations that are applied and know that the appropriate ones have been applied for the appropriate areas. You can also use our sort order and sort by our phase configurations in PhDWin. This allows you to be much more efficient with your time. You're able to go through various areas that are all sharing the same phase configuration. You project the same products are calculated, they're all calculated the same way because they all share the same phase configuration. So you very quickly just move from one case to the next, and you're not having to jump back and forth and figure out which products need to be projected and which ones are going to be calculated. The final obstacle that is one of the bigger ones to meet is the obstacle to reporting. So once you've done all the work, you've imported the data, you've controlled your phase configurations, so your users are working correctly. Now you're going to need to calculate your cash flows and report the appropriate volumes and revenues associated with your CCS project. So your standard CCS project will have unique products that are special to them that must be projected and displayed in a graph, and will require a user to build unique graph settings to meet those needs. They're also going to have specialized expenses and revenue streams that a user is going to have to model. And then you're going to need to be able to report those volumes, those expenses, those revenue streams in a format that is then easy for you to share with your corporate entity or regulatory agencies. Building custom graphs will allow the users to project unique products and visualize their product relationships. So over here on the right-hand side, you can see a graph here for a monthly CO2 graph. This is for your CCS project, where we project the purchased amount of CO2, the injection requirement, and then we calculate the recycled CO2 by subtracting the injection from the purchased. So if a user came to a case and they saw this graph, it's pretty easy for them to know which is appropriate for them to build, which ones should be projected and which ones are calculated, and the relationship between them. If a user went into a different case, they may need to project different products. So here we have a monthly wet CO2 graph, where one of the products on the graph is CO2 wet prod. So here they're projecting wet CO2 production and back calculating some other values. So using a specialized custom graphs not only lets you build the products and project the products that you want, but it is also a way for the corporation to convey to the users which are going to be the appropriate products for this particular case as well. Now you may also want to be able to graph non-volume based items. So you may want to graph some economic outputs, things like revenue and expenses. If you ever see your revenue drop below your expense line, then you know that you are not making any money anymore, and you hope that you come back out of that. Once you build it for your particular fields and particular cases, you'll then want to make sure that you're able to generate summary graphs for those fields, for the areas, for your company, and that those summary graphs themselves will also include any of those special products, wet CO2, CO2 prod, CO2 injection, and so forth in that graph, so you can include that in your reporting. Once you projected your volumes of your various products and calculated the volumes of your various products, next you're going to need to use that to impact your cash flow. So you're going to need to apply revenue to the particular products and expenses to those other products as well. Ideally, if you're working in a good system, you're going to be able to have a linked price that is associated with some sort of index price, an IMEX index price, or maybe it's linked to a corporate price index that you're going to be using for the particular evaluation. But a way for you to share a price so you're not having to build the prices on each individual case. But you're also going to need to apply some sort of differentials so that you can adjust for the quality of your gas or the oil or any expenses that are included in your differentials for the calculation of your effective price over a period of time. And then you're also going to need to be able to apply the expenses that are associated with those products. So here you can see a sample of CO2 purchase has an op cost and a transportation cost that are slightly different. So your operating cost would be working interest based, and your transportation cost would be revenue interest based. And then your CO2 recycle has a different op cost as well. So you want to be able to make sure that you can apply various types of expenses to your various products. You will notice you can only apply prices and expenses to volume-based products for obvious reasons. Sometimes the default revenue or expense streams that we have built in our system aren't going to meet your particular needs. So we do have the ability in PhD Win to build custom streams that may be required in order for you to properly evaluate your area. Here we can see we have our default streams where we have the stream category, so volume or revenue or an expense category, the interest associated with that stream, and then whether that stream is based on the gross volume or the shrunk volume of that product. You'll notice that we also have an option here for stream category. This will allow us to better aggregate the data together. So instead of just aggregating by stream, so instead of just grabbing all op cost plus trans cost plus other cost and having to do that addition manually, we can gather data by stream category, which would allow us to gather all of the revenue streams or all of the expense streams together into one common column. This will definitely reduce your lost volumes, lost expenses when you build custom reports if you reference report streams. Or I'm sorry, stream categories. You may also need to build and apply special tax models. These models may be a reduction in the tax rate, or they may be adjustments based on current events in the well. If you ever run into that need, please feel free to reach out. It is fairly easy in PHEWin version 3 to build those special models, have them either modify an existing one or work on top of it, depending on your current needs. Once you've projected your volumes, applied your revenue and expenses, the last thing that you would really need to do is start reporting those values. So the biggest issue you will run into is how do we report those custom products? So PHDWin has several formatted reports that do give users the ability to make some adjustments to them. So the one on the right-hand side here, this is our detailed three volume report. Users are able to select any three products that they'd like to be displayed. And here you can see I have selected CO2 purchased, CO2 injected, and CO2 recycled as my three products. And we can see both the gross and the net value for both of those. So if we needed to see a formatted report that included all those volumes, but also would include our revenue streams, our expense streams, and our cash flow, the detailed three volume report would meet those needs. But sometimes you need to have a little bit more control than that. You want to control the order of the columns themselves, of all the columns. And so we do have a custom user report where users are able to pick 10 columns to define. Those can be volume, those can be expenses or revenue. The users have a lot of control with the custom user report. So here you can see I have a gross and net oil, our CO2 production, our revenue and our expenses, and then our non-discounted cash flow. These are our default reports that ship with the program. But these may not meet your needs. So just so everyone knows, PHDWin does offer the ability to add custom reports as long as it's a DevExpress, which is a third-party product. You can add custom reports, or TRC Consultants does provide consulting services to build those custom reports for you as well. Outside of formatted reports, the next most common report request we have is the ability to export data to Excel. So we went through and we built a new tool in version 3 called report tables that give users the ability to control the data that is being pushed out to custom report tables, and that data can then be exported to Excel or used for various sources. When exporting to Excel, you have two options. You can do a one-liner or a monthly report. So both of those options would allow the user to build a custom report table here where they define the column label. So this would be the label of the header in the CO2 file or in the Excel file. So it could include custom products such as your CO2s. You pick your particular product that you want to display. And then the stream value that would be associated with it. And last but not least, you pick the ownership value as well. You also have the option to track cumulative values. So if we wanted to have a cum CO2, cum CO2 purchase, cum CO2 recycle, we would simply add another column over here and choose to track the cumulative value of that product. You also have the ability to include general information in our direct to Excel reports. So this could be case name, field name, reservoir. It could also include economic inputs or outputs, ROIs or price or expense decks, or custom ID codes that may be associated with the cases. One of the things you're going to probably need to be tracking is what is the source of the CO2. So you may have a custom ID code in your database assigned to the cases that identifies the CO2 source that is associated with that particular case. And that can be included as long as it is a part of the case list. When you run this report, it'll be included in our CSV direct to Excel reports. The last type of reporting that I have clients asking about is how do we store data in stored report tables so it then can be accessed by outside sources, whether that outside source is a corporate reporting tool or some sort of visualization software like a Spotfire or something like that. So whenever you run a report, in PHDWin, you can choose to have it saved as a stored report table, and then you can reference that report table with other programs. That report table could simply utilize a standard report that we have. It could use a custom user-defined report table, or it can use what are known as stored procedures, which are special SQL queries that are able to run and aggregate data in a particular way to meet your needs. And that can pull a lot more data out of the system for you and get you the data that you want. Now, we do have a canned stored report tables report. It's called V3 Connect. V3 Connect is a direct a stored report table that connects to Excel. It's very easy to update with large amounts of data. You run the V3 Connect report, it builds a stored report table, and then you simply just go and refresh and update that Excel spreadsheet, and it'll refresh with the up-to-date numbers out of PhDWin. These V3 Connect, while it does come with a standard set of columns and values, it can be customizable to meet your needs. So here below you can see this is a sample of a printout. You have nearly infinite number of columns that you can utilize. You'll notice that this goes from column A to column CT here, and it even goes further beyond that. But this also includes those specialized products for your CCS evaluation. So things like gross purchase of CO2, net purchase of CO2, gross CO2 recycle and net CO2 recycle, CO2 injections, and so forth. It can even include the operating cost associated with the recycle CO2. So very customizable to meet your particular needs, but it's also very fast and very, very easy to navigate. A lot of our clients have been really blown away with what they can use PhDWin V3 Connect to see, and we've been blown away with what they've been able to do with it after they've gotten the data out. Some really impressive work going on with both visualization and data sharing utilizing V3 Connect. I hope today that I have demonstrated how you could use data discipline to overcome the obstacles that your team may have in your CCS projects. We talked about how you could organize your complicated data from multiple sources with corporate controlled product definitions that will help you streamline your evaluations and data aggregation. Covered the ability to create corporate level product definitions that can include how they're projected, what products are calculated and how, and then also how you might name those standards to better facilitate the usage of them by your various teams in different areas and different projects. And finally, we talked about how the new reporting options in PhDWin that give you a controlled cash flow streams will improve both your evaluations, expanding your ability for revenue and expenses on your various custom products, but also improve your reporting options as you're able to build and create both formatted Excel reports and stored report tables that would meet any of your corporate and/or regulatory reporting needs. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope I helped solve some of your current problems or show you that the solutions are out there for your current problems that you're having with your CCS projects. Please feel free to contact us with any questions that you may have, and have yourself an absolutely wonderful day. Thank you again.